Hello and welcome to What the F Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Friday, December 17th, 2021. Welcome to day 332. Joe Biden acknowledged that the Build Back Better bill will not clear Congress by the end of this year, despite efforts and pledges by Democrats to pass the social spending and climate change bill before Christmas. Biden said, quote, "It takes time to finalize these agreements, prepare the legislative changes, and finish all the parliamentary and procedural steps needed to enable a Senate vote." Biden made the remarks after it became clear that his team so far has failed to secure Joe Manchin's vote. Pushing the bill back to next year means that the December 15th child tax credit payments, which have been sent to families for the past 6 months but expired Wednesday, will be the last ones until the program is renewed. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the administration has, quote, talked to Treasury officials and others about doing double payments in February as an option, end quote, if the Build Back Better Act passes in January. Meanwhile, the Senate parliamentarian rejected the Democrats' plan to include immigration reform in the social spending bill for the third time now. Elizabeth McDonough said provisions to extend work permits and provide temporary deportation protection for some immigrants who have been in the United States since before 2011 don't comply with Senate rules associated with the reconciliation process. The so-called reconciliation bills are not allowed to have provisions in them that are driven more by policy changes than by changes in the federal budget. Democrats had argued that the work permits and other provisions would have a budgetary impact. Moving on, the Trump administration engaged in deliberate efforts to undermine the nation's response to the coronavirus for political purposes, according to the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus. A new report from the committee said the administration repeatedly overruled public health and testing guidance by the nation's top infectious disease experts, blocked officials from speaking publicly in order to promote Trump's political agenda, and attempted to interfere with other public health guidance. The subcommittee also found that the Trump White House blocked the CDC from conducting public briefings for more than 3 months after a top CDC official in late February 2020, quote, accurately warned the public about the risks posed by the coronavirus, end quote. Meanwhile, New York State reported its highest number of new COVID-19 cases in a single day of the entire pandemic. The 21,027 new cases surpassed the previous record of 19,942 cases that was set in January, and about 8% of the total of all COVID-19 tests were positive. Nationwide, hospitalizations have increased by about 3%, and deaths rose by about 7% over the past week. Moving on, the Biden administration plans to replace all of the nation's lead water pipes over the next decade. The Lead Pipe and Paint Action Plan will use $15 billion from the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed last month. Up to 10 million households, schools, and care facilities currently get their drinking water through lead pipes. Meanwhile, the FDA permanently lifted major restrictions on access to abortion pills, allowing doctors to prescribe the drugs online and have them mailed to patients or sent to local pharmacies. The drug is approved for use in combination with another medication to terminate pregnancies up to 10 weeks. Before the coronavirus pandemic, doctors could prescribe the pills to patients who were able to pick them up in person. In response to COVID-19, the Biden administration suspended that requirement, allowing them to be mailed to patients instead. Moving on, a Florida man was sentenced to 5 years in prison for assaulting police officers with a fire extinguisher, a plank, and a long pole during the Capitol riot. The sentence marks the longest for a Capitol rioter so far. Robert Palmer had argued that he should get a more lenient sentence because Trump has not been held accountable, which U.S. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan rejected. Roger Stone, meanwhile, asserted his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination to every question asked to him during his 90-minute deposition with the House committee. And a judge rejected a request from Fox News to dismiss a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit from Dominion Voting Systems over baseless claims made by Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Jeanine Pirro, and Fox guests that Dominion was using algorithms in voting machines created in Venezuela to rig multiple elections for Hugo Chavez, the late president. The judge wrote, quote, Fox possessed countervailing evidence of election fraud from the Department of Justice, election experts, and Dominion at the time it had been making its statements. Adding, quote, the fact that despite this evidence, Fox continued to publish its allegation against Dominion suggests Fox knew the allegations were probably false, end quote. And finally, the Republican National Committee agreed to pay up to $1.6 million of Trump's personal legal fees. The payments are meant to help Trump defend himself in parallel fraud investigations by New York Attorney General Letitia James and Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. At issue is whether the Trump Organization committed fraud by manipulating the value of assets to obtain loans and tax benefits.
That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Anditas.